So let's look at the next page and talk about using the cap rate to determine the value. In our example, well, first of all, you must know the net operating income. Just like when you're making an offer on an ugly house, you cannot determine the Mayo without knowing the ARV, can you? This is a question that usually would require audience participation. All right? You got to know the ARV to determine the Mayo. Well, you got to know the cap rate if you're going to try to figure out the rest of the equation. And again, so your first thing you got to do is collect net operating income. Where are you going to get the NOI from? You got to get it from the seller. Where else are you going to get it? Now, the first thing you do when you get the income statement is you question everything on it, and you figure most of it's crap. So you start looking for the crap holes. You start looking to see if it makes sense. You start looking. In fact, I tell you what, let's talk about right now, Brandon, some percentages to help maybe, I guess you would call these slack adjusters or equilibrium adjusters. I don't know. If I'm looking at an apartment complex, I would expect that the expenses, now excluding mortgage payment, does not figure into the net operating income. Mortgage payment does not figure in. Make a note. The net operating income is the gross income minus the expenses excluding mortgage payment. So based on that, an apartment project, a lender will not finance it if it exceeds what percentage of the gross as expenses in your estimation?
You know, again, it's tough to answer because we have so many different lenders, but as a standard, I would say that number is probably close to 85%.
Now, I'm talking about gross income. Now, I'm talking about without mortgage payment now. You're trying to do debt coverage. I'm talking about...
Oh, you're just talking
without
about
mortgage
operating,
payment.
just
operating expenses opposed to gross income. Yeah.
No more than 20%. You shouldn't see it more than 20%.
I think you're going to probably have a tough time finding. I'd say when you get above the mid-30s, 40 tops. Now, I'm not telling you that you can't finance a project if the expenses are above 40, but I can tell you there better be mitigating circumstances as to why they're above 40 that are tolerable. But when you get your expenses, let's say you got an apartment project, and you see expenses on there of 56%. Okay, you got a problem. Either your income sucks because you got a big vacancy, or your expenses are way out of control. Now, if you see a way to fix that problem, have you identified a prospect because of it? But when I'm trying to refinance a property, if I got expenses at 56%, I might as well save my loan application, because it ain't going to get funded. So I guess what I'm saying is if you see an apartment project that's supposed to be in good operating condition and the expenses are above 40% of the gross income, something wrong. On the other hand, if the expenses are 20% of the gross income, something's wrong. Somebody's lying. Somebody's looking at the numbers and trying to make you believe. They're looking for that dumb doctor who's too dumb to even get professional help to identify that the expenses are wrong. You look in there in the middle of the page, and it's true. In my world, if it's got a cap rate, probably not going to buy it. Can you see why? What do you have to have a cap rate? A net income, don't you? If the property's got a net income, I got some that's got a net income when I bought them, but the net income was so lousy, nobody was talking about a cap rate, because it was a ridiculous cap rate. So when I look at a project, if it's got a cap rate, I'm worried already. Now, of course, if it comes with a 12, 13, 14, 15% cap rate, then, I'm not that much worried, because I know if I fix the problem that caused the cap rate to be 15%, I can get the cap rate down and lower it and maybe sell it at 7 or 8% cap and thus create a lot of money. And when we get to the numbers here, you'll see that's a huge amount of money on a multi-million-dollar project. To go from a 10 cap to a 7 cap is a lot of money on a multi-million-dollar project. To go from a 15 cap to a 7 cap, we'll let you catch up with him pretty soon. I mean, that is a huge, huge, huge profit. So if the property has no income, it has no cap rate. I have a 108-unit apartment complex that Dale and I were working on up in Michigan. In fact, I'll show you a picture of it here. Dale and I had this thing under contract. Rock negotiated a deal. Dale was up there negotiating a deal. We got the deal under contract. Took several months, it seems like. I don't know. I don't take Dale. Way too long. This was bank owned, wasn't it? Bank owned? Bank owned. They were pain in the neck. They thought they had, the world's finest looking property here, when in fact, it's 108 units boarded up. Boarded up. Looked like that. And if that wasn't bad enough, it's in Flint, Michigan. Flint, Michigan. There it is. There's another picture of it. Now, on the surface, I said to myself, golly, we buying this thing for $1.1 million, 108 units there. Can't find any fault with that. Who can find fault with that? Anytime you can buy apartments for $10,000 a unit, you got a good deal. I don't care where you live. Then I said to myself, well, I probably have to spend another $10,000 a unit to fix that thing up. Who knows? My guess is probably worth $35,000, $40,000 a unit after that. Problem is, I went to the property. Then I went inside the property. And I can assure you, you're looking at $1.5 million minimum to renovate that project. I mean minimum, and that's to do a decent job of it. Everything has to be replaced. You're starting from scratch with a shell for the most part. And they want $1.1 to buy it. And that wasn't even the hard part. That wasn't even the deal killer. The deal killer was when it was all said and done, it wasn't worth more than $2.5 million. So let me see, I buy it for $1 million. Fix it up for $1.5 million, and it's worth $2.5 million. That sounds like a good deal.
It's not a great area.
Not a great area on top of that. I mean, we killed it. We killed it. Those guys will wind up selling that project probably for $300,000 or $500,000 tops. Tops. Now they don't know that now. My guess is they'll be involved in that project for another. How long they had it, Dale?
3 years.
3 years. I wonder why. They're looking for the greater fool. They're looking for the dumb doctor. I'm bringing that up because what was the cap rate on this totally vacant property? 0. So forget that cap rate stuff. That's only when I'm selling, not when I'm buying. Now, if that's the case, how would I determine what the market value was if I did renovate this thing?
What kind of rents you could get for it?
In this case, I did just a quick one. You guys better pay attention to this because this is a quick down and dirty pre-screening mechanism. And we're going to get to that today on the things you should look for the quickest to pass or play on them. And that was, what are apartments in this area selling for by the door? And frankly, we couldn't find anything selling in the whole area for more than $25,000 a door. So what am I supposed to believe here? That ours is going to be worth more because we did the renovation? Because we're special? No. Besides, it's a low-income, low-rent area on top of that, so I didn't even have to figure out what the net operating income would be potentially to know that the deal wasn't worth doing. Did everybody follow my thinking on this? It ain't low-hanging fruit. In fact, it's sour fruit. But it seemed to be good on the surface. Due diligence killed it. Only you can produce the NOI by listing the income and expenses and plugging a maintenance and management factor. Now, where do you get the numbers to do this from? Okay, there's an NOI. If it's an operating building, you figure that up when you're buying it. You find out what the NOI is. The first thing you got to try to get to the bottom of, if it's an operating building, whether it be apartments, anything that's income producing, you got to try to get to the NOI. That's the very first thing I want to know. What's the NOI? And then I want to see how it was arrived at. And then from there, you can attach a cap rate to it if it's applicable. When I'm buying, not very applicable. When I'm selling, very applicable. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on that? Before we get to the quiz, take a look at your pro forma sheet on page 23. Now, before I go any further, down at the bottom of that page where it says copyright 2005, yada, 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 you can ignore that on that page. You have my permission to white that out. I didn't copyright this pro forma page. It just slipped throughout the book. This is one I stole from somebody. Probably stole it from him or something. I don't know.
Please don't steal my fee agreement.
Your fee agreement?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's stealable. That's a beauty, I'll tell you. Anyway, This is the piece of paper that you need to get you some blanks on, or get on software or spreadsheet format, so you can plug in the numbers and determine what you think the net operating income is. There's your expenses right there on most any property. Put your income at the top, you got the net operating income at the bottom, and you got your answer. Now, any property that's operating, they're going to produce you this spreadsheet on their form anyway, and you can look at their numbers and check them immediately. If you're going to figure out what a property is going to be worth after you fix what broke, you're going to need this form to do it on. What did we say about reserves? Okay, you notice it's down there in the middle. Some people put them up here at the top. Some people just put them down there as another expense. We don't care as long as you get them on there. Vacancies on there. What kind of a vacancy factor? Let's talk vacancy here for a minute, Brandon. Lenders nationwide, what kind of vacancy factor from what to what are they looking for right now to approve loans?
Typically you're looking at 5%, but it really depends on the property type. We've got an internal matrix that we use that show anywhere from 5 to 10%, or hotels, they'll even assume a 25% vacancy rate because it's a hotel or a motel. So, but as a general rule of thumb, you're talking 5% on multifamily, 5% mobile home parks, 7% on office and retail, 5% on industrial, and 10% on mixed use and self-storage. So those are kind of the general rules of thumb.
So go through those again.
I was actually going to offer something if I can.
Okay.
We have a spreadsheet that we use internally to calculate the NOI and your cap rates. For anybody who is interested, I would be happy to email you that along with this matrix that we use of, all of the standard vacancy, the replacement reserves, all of these other factors that we use. I'm happy to email it to you for free. The only thing I would ask you to do is I wasn't prepared to speak today, but I do have brochures on my nonprofit. So if you'll take that, and if you'll allow me to email you when we launch our new campaign, that's the only thing that I would ask.
So that'd be pretty valuable. A list of the reserves that lenders are looking for, and a spreadsheet to help us determine the. Okay, well, I want that as well.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, give him a round of applause for that. He ain't getting anything out of that. Okay, we're going to come back here. We're going to come back here to cap rate quiz. Don't worry, I'm not passing it by. But right now, look at page 24 as well. Reserves replacement. Now, I've identified for you what I think lenders are looking for on reserves down there. And I want Brandon to see if he agrees with those or not, because I could be wrong. Not likely, but possible. What do you think?
Well, as far as how we typically see reserves calculated, it's typically on a per unit or per pad basis, or sometimes a square footage basis. So we don't use just a percentage factor. We drill down a little more and figure, if it's multifamily, it's going to be about $250 per unit on average, is what most lenders are going to use as a replacement reserve. So again, this will be in the spreadsheet that I email you if you want one. For office space, we calculate 20 cents per square foot as replacement reserve. For retail space, 15 cents per square foot. And for industrial and self-storage, we typically calculate 10 cents per square foot.
And you're talking about 10 cents per year?
Square foot.
Per square foot per year.
Per year, that's correct.
Guys got that? Yep. The number times the square footage for 1 year. So that applies if you're doing an annualized pro forma. If not, you got to divide that by 12. For the sake of the people listening to these tapes, go ahead and give me your email address so they can reach you. Of course, only the people in this room are going to be listening to these tapes.
Okay, not a problem. The email address that you can email me to is Brandon, spelled Brandon, at Integrity, INTEGRITY, commercial, COMMERCIAL.com. Nice and short for you. So again, it's Brandon at integritycommercial.com.
Okay, the next page, net leases versus full service leases. And I'm bringing this up now because it also affects your pro forma, which affects your net operating income, which affects your cap rate. Net lease, full service lease. All of you have heard net or triple net leases, haven't you? All right. Well, in a nutshell, that simply means the owner has no expenses except for a mortgage payment. All of that, the rest of that is put on to the tenant. Now, if a tenant is signing a net lease, they're responsible for taxes, insurance, and maintenance in return for a lot lower per foot price than they would if they're not signing a net lease. Obviously, if I'm a landlord, what kind of lease do I prefer a tenant sign? A net lease. Some cases that's applicable, some places it's not applicable. Some cases you had to be hard pressed to get some tenants to sign a net lease. Tell me everything you know about this lease stuff here, and what kind of properties do you think that a net lease would be unapplicable, where I got tenants?
Typically on offices, we see full service leases. We don't see a lot of triple net leases in office space. We do see it from time to time, but as a general rule, we see full service leases.
Would you agree that most of the time a net lease is applicable when there's one tenant?
Absolutely.
In charge of the whole property?
Absolutely.
And
single tenant.
So when you got multiple tenants, directly you don't do a net lease, but indirectly we can with the use of the thing called CAM, Common Area Maintenance, which we're coming up to next. Here's what you got to know about leases. It's totally negotiable between landlord and tenant. There's a customary way to doing business, and then there's your way. Your way does not have to match customary, as long as the market will agree to your way. If you're the landlord, you get to choose how you want to put tenants in your property. If the tenants agree that they're willing to do that, then no problem. Of course, if the market won't agree with you, then you're going to have to back off and get a little bit less egregious to work with. But certainly you want the tenant to pay as much or as all the repairs as possible, and you want them to pay all the other expenses. And obviously you can see if I got an office building, I got 20 tenants in it, that I can't tell each of those tenants that they're responsible for all the maintenance and so forth, when the maintenance is a community or a common area thing. So we handle that on the next page, by charging them a CAM, monthly CAM, common area maintenance. CAM is nothing more than the cost of maintenance divided on a pro rata share on the amount of square footage that they're renting. So if I got a 100,000 square foot building and I got a 10,000 foot tenant in it, they're going to pay 10% of the cost of maintaining that entire project. And on many landlords, in my experience anyway, they really get crazy. They'll take whatever, let's say I got a 100,000 square foot building and I got 20,000 of it empty. I know landlords who will divide the 100% of the maintenance up to the 80% of the people that are there. Not come out of pocket with 20%. And their lease is written that way. You're responsible for whatever percentage of the maintenance that occurs based on the occupancy rate that we have. Now, of course, if they get it 100% rented, their CAM number comes down every month. CAM is billed to the tenant on a monthly basis, in addition to their rent. And sometimes the rent won't change until it's time for the lease to end, but the CAM does change sometimes from month to month. Everybody understand that? It's nothing but the total divided by the number of people in the building. I'm renting a building out. I'm not paying anything for common area maintenance. They're paying it. They're paying it. Or they can go find some other building. No questions?
I would say the other thing that we see there in CAM agreements is cleaning expenses. So if there's a cleaning service that's going to clean the whole building, that's typically another area that's added into the CAM.
What is in CAM? Let's see. Do I have anything? Oh, yeah. Parking lot electric. Parking lot cleaning. Utilities used by the whole project, like lights in the parking lot. Exterior maintenance of the building. I put exterior maintenance in the building in there. Some landlords don't charge for that. They eat that. Why? I mean, you might as well put tenants in houses and do the work for them while you're at it, if you can do that. As far as I'm concerned, the tenant should be responsible for maintaining the property. And so I just add all the exterior maintenance in there. Now, the rest of it is totally negotiable. For example, if your tenants have individual air conditioners, heating and air conditioning systems, some landlords make them responsible. Some landlords bear that responsibility. I'll tell you one, it seems like the landlords I've been dealing with, they want the tenant to be responsible. And if you can get away with it, you get away with it. And you got to look at this. This is not the same. When you got let's say you got a strip center compared to the house that you've been leasing out. The whole city's full of houses. The demand and the supply, you got a lot more people looking for houses than you do holes where they can operate their business and make their living out of. When you got a strip center and it's in a good location and there ain't but a few places in the whole city available, you get to kind of make more rules than if you got, if you got a big market out there where there's, holes everywhere and they got a lot of choices. So it really depends on this law of supply and demand. But in my experience anyway, I found it easier to get people interested and live with my rules when their income comes from that property rather than just a place to live. And I've been on the other side of that, and I really dealt with some hard-nosed landlords. I mean, man, you don't want it my way, hit the highway in no uncertain terms. You any comment on that before we move on here? Because we're going to...
No, I think you've covered it great.
Okay, we done with that? Well, then we got to come back and take the test. Back on page 22. An apartment complex has an NOI of $726 a year, and they're asking $9 million. What's the cap rate? Should you buy it? An apartment complex has an NOI of $726 a year, and they're asking $9 million. What's the cap rate? 8%? And that would be correct. Should you buy it? No. Well, you should if you're a REIT maybe, but not you. 8% cap rate means they're selling at a top retail price. Okay? An office building has an NOI of $285 a year, and seller wants 2.2. What's the cap rate? 13%. Does that sound like a good deal? Yes. Well, this one has a cap rate. It's at 13%. What does that immediately tell you about the building? That means it's got a lot of improvements that can be made to lower the cap rate and increase the value. Are we clear now? When you lower the cap rate, you increase the value. If I see a 13% cap, and I know the market's paying 7%, that's like seeing a $100,000 house they're asking $60,000 for. Can you guys relate to that language? Huh? Okay. The strip center has an NOI of $125 a year, and the broker says he can get a sale approved at $1 million. Does it look good? Yes. Who says yes? Okay, why? Because the cap rate is 12.5%. 12.5%. An apartment building has 180 units and needs 500 in work, and it's 60% occupied with an NOI of minus $84,000. Does seller want 2.6? You feel you can raise the NOI to $450,000 a year. What will the building be worth at a 10 cap if you do? $4.5 million. 7 cap? 6.4. Hey guys, can you look at those two numbers and see the difference between a 7 cap and a 10 cap? Quite a difference, eh? Okay, so what would you pay? Would you pay the asking price? Who says yes? Who says no? Who says no? Okay. The answer is you never pay the asking price without trying to get it cheaper. But could you pay the asking price if you had to and make a boatload of money? Yes. Now your question.
My question is, do you factor in the $84,000 for the net operating expense?
How would you want me to factor it into what?
If it's already operating at a negative,
yes.
You think you can raise it to $450.
Yes.
So that means you're not only covering the negative,
yes.
the negative operating expense, you're adding so you've really increased it over $500,000.
Well, you're right. But remember, it's 60% occupied.
Yeah.
And those rents are probably low, too. Any landlord that'll let it go 40% vacant has also not got the rents up where they belong.
So do you not include that when you would not factor that in there?
You have several good questions. The fact that it's got a minus $84,000 net operating income is a great bargaining tool when you're buying. Now, should I buy this property if I don't clearly see how to turn it around and turn it into a positive rather quickly and have the wherewithal to do so? No, I shouldn't. Does cap rate apply to my purchase here? Does cap rate apply to my purchase? folks, there is no cap rate. There is no income. I use that as a tool to negotiate a lower price. Now, should I be asking myself, well, what can I get this cap rate to, and what would it be worth if I did?
Yes.
Well, that's what I asked in the example. So to determine the ARV, I had to plug in a cap rate that I thought was realistic. You following me?
Yes.
I don't want to pay 2.6 for this project until I figure out in my mind that it's worth 4.5 to 6.5. You want to sell a building with 210 NOI at a 7 cap. What's the asking price? $3 million. That's what you're asking in this case. If you raise the rents first and increase the NOI to $260,000, and now you want to sell it in an 8 cap. 3.25. $3,250,000. It's simple math, isn't it?
Yes.
All right. And all of you got 100%, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's start on talking about how to identify good target prospects on page 27. And this is extremely important to you because we're still in the pre-screening phase, aren't we? Yep. All right, we're going to get to constructing offers, but right now we're in pre-screening stage. So, there are simple ways to identify prospects and eliminate suspects to determine whether we want to move forward with a deal or not. And then there are some things that are going to take a little bit of time for us to discover and a little bit of work. What I want to talk about are the front-end things that we look for in each type of project to determine whether we need to look for more. In the middle of that page, it says, if you can't buy it cheap, you don't want it. We do not pay a retail price for property with the possible exception of vacant land that we see a huge upside for, and then only if we get participation from the seller. So everybody got that down. And if I pay that retail price for that vacant land, am I going to pay cash for it? Nope, that's a deal killer. That's a deal killer. If I got to pay retail price for vacant land and pay cash, forget about it. I'm going back to the fruit tree. It's over. Just like that, it's over. So when we ask the seller or the broker, will you do some short-term financing with us? They say, no, we want all cash. Next. It's over. Too many other deals out there. Now, if I wanted to go about raising the money to pay retail price for this land and pay all cash for it, could I probably make a nice profit on this thing by buying that land at retail price and figuring out what the best use of this is and turning it into whatever it is? Isn't that what every developer in the world does? Yep. That's what they do. Now, some of them buy it at less than market value, but that's what they do. They go buy property, they put it under contract, they pay cash for it when they close for the most part. Sometimes they take up to 18 months to close. But they pay cash for it when they close, and then they go develop it. I guess there's nothing wrong with that program. But hey, if I'm going to do that, I can do that anytime, anywhere I want. I just go, where can I pay retail price for land and pay cash for it? I got my pick of where I want to go. That's not low-hanging fruit. So two things are important to me when buying vacant land. Well, the main two. The main identifiers. One, I want the seller to help me with some short-term financing. And two, I want to buy the vacant land for less than what the vacant land is worth. As is, where is. Why do I feel that way about that vacant land? The answer? I have to assume that my plans are not going to work out. I have to assume that if I buy this property, I have an exit strategy that don't have anything to do with me developing or building anything. And what would that exit strategy be? Sell the land. All right, let's turn over to apartments. Pre-screening apartments. As you go through these, look at the stars out at the end of the bullet. When I'm looking for apartments, what I'm looking for mainly are the four things with a star. Number one, I want a large vacancy factor. Folks, to me, that's the same as looking at a house that's ugly. If it's got a large vacancy factor, I know it's a potential deal. If a house is ugly, I know it's a potential deal. Now, if I don't know how to fix the vacancy factor, though, maybe I shouldn't be involved with one with a large vacancy factor unless my exit strategy is to sell it to somebody else and let them get involved in it. Frankly, it's not hard to fix vacancies, and we will talk about that on the last day. Number two, I want to run down condition. And quite often, those two go hand in hand. The rundown condition is what causes the large vacancy factor. So obviously, now I got a project that I got to renovate and then rent. And incidentally, if anybody thinks that's going to happen in 60 days, you're kidding yourself. You're looking at several months to turn around a project like this. So you better be prepared to do that. When you go borrow money, this is why you borrow more than you need. You borrow what you need and then some, because man plans and God laughs. Skip down to high cap rate. When I see a high cap rate, I know there's something wrong that I may be able to fix, so I want to know more. And actually, I'm looking for cap rates much higher than 10%. At least 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 cap rate. And incidentally, you will rarely ever find a property that is advertised with a cap rate that exceeds 10%. How come? Well, that's the broker telling you the property's got a problem. They don't dramatize the negative. And a 15% cap rate is a huge negative. Low asking price per unit with apartments. That's actually probably one of the first things that I look at. In fact, it is the first thing, now that I think about it. When I'm looking on the sheet here, where you got pre-screening properties, you got them. You guys got the book, right? The joint venture book dealie, and if you don't, there's some in the back of the room where you got my property information sheets in it. First thing I look for is the number of units, and I mentally divide that into the asking price. When I do that, I come up with a number. And then I ask myself, where is this project located? And that's important because, if I'm in San Francisco, am I going to have a much higher price per unit than I am if I'm in Biloxi? You think? Okay. In Biloxi, I'd be hard-pressed to get to $20,000 a unit. In San Francisco, that won't buy the outhouse behind the building. And I don't know what I'm looking for per unit in San Francisco, but I know it's much higher than $20,000. If I lived in San Francisco, I'd certainly know. It's all relative anyway. Like that 108 unit I showed you. I said to myself, 1.1 million, 108 units, that's $10,000 a unit. Nothing wrong with that. Even boarded up, nothing wrong with that. Until I find out they're only worth 25 after they're fixed. Something wrong with that. Now, if those same units were worth $40,000 after they're fixed, it might have been a different deal. Still not very attractive to me. Who thinks a $4 million value with $2.5 million in it is a good deal? Well, I don't. Can you imagine the amount of work we'd have had done to renovate that 108 unit to make it worth $4 million? Can you picture it? You're looking at months. Months. Then you got to put all them tenants in there. Months. I mean, you'd be a year turning that project around, maybe even more getting it renovated. And imagine the contractors you'd have to go through in a building like that. How many of you have renovated houses? Okay, how'd you like to do 108 of them simultaneously? Huh? I mean, you're talking about a project that's a lot of work, and if it's going to be a lot of work, there better be a lot of money in it. And I'm going to tell you, a $1.5 million spread for that massive amount of work ain't enough. Besides, that's just the spread. That's not necessarily the profit, is it? Didn't take long to analyze that one. But I analyzed it on the front end very quickly. 108 units, 10 grand a unit. I got to move forward on that one. And we did. You see, I didn't know till way later in the game that they were only worth about 25 a unit, totally renovated. If I'd known that in the beginning, and then of course in the beginning I was told that it'd take about $500,000 to renovate this project, Hundale. Quiet now, huh? Well, that $500,000 grew a little when I got inside of it, only because I got a lot more experience at it than Dale does. And incidentally, when you're looking at apartments, guys, you got to look beyond the inside of each apartment. You say to yourself, well, okay, I can probably fix these units easy for $5,000-6,000 each. But don't forget the roofs. Don't forget the windows. Don't forget the heating and air conditioning units. And don't forget the parking lot. And don't forget the landscaping. You've got to add all that stuff in there as well.
Say, Ron?
Yeah.
Are you factoring, what if it's 108 efficiencies versus, you could have 108 3 bedrooms and also square footage, like you could have 1,000 square foot units.
Mike, it doesn't matter if the average apartment in that vicinity was selling for $25,000. I'm assuming that some of them are going to be 3s, 2s, 1s in efficiencies. Either way, you got an average. Remember, average. Some are going to be more, some are going to be less. But I still got an average value on that thing of $2.5 million when I'm done. Where you live in L.A., obviously the numbers are going to be a lot higher per unit, but still all relative. I'll be paying more per unit, even though I'll be renovating them same cost. Better chance for me to make money on a project in L.A. 10 times over than one in Flint, Michigan. Because the renovation costs are the same, give or take. But when it's through, it's worth more. So if I can negotiate a good price, I got a bigger spread to work with.
Are you looking at square footage at all? Gross?
Not on apartments. I don't. I do on other type of buildings, but not on apartments. Apartments, I look at asking price per unit opposed to market value per unit on the average. And you know that I'm just, basically that's an educated guess based on what's going around there right now. And I look at vacancy factor. Those are the two things. When I see big vacancy and poor condition, I know I got at least something that requires more investigation. Incidentally, look down on where it says what to look for. 1, 2, 3, fourth line down. That is not funding partners. That is feuding partners. Feuding partners. Like the one I told you about in Louisiana. Partners are killing each other over that. And somebody's going to steal that property, if not us, because of that. Nothing wrong with the property that can't be fixed quickly. Okay, property in foreclosure. Now, obviously, if it's in foreclosure and it's brought to you in foreclosure, that one would deserve a star too, wouldn't it? But sometimes you don't know they're in foreclosure until after you get the preliminary pre-screening information. Distressed owners of any kind. Large debt, small equity. Do you remember the $7 million project I was telling you about? Large debt, small equity. Anytime I got a large debt that I can take over, I know I can work out the small equity with the seller. Now, of course, what's my first attempt to do? Sell me the property for what you owe on it, just like a house. And many times that will be how you buy them. And believe me, you can buy commercial properties taking over subject to and giving the seller no money and giving them their life back and fixing the mess they made. First thing I look at when I see a small equity is, can I get it for what's owed? Secondly, if I don't get it for what's owed, if you and I agree on the terms, will you sit around and wait till I get paid before you get paid? And frankly, I'm not real adamant about working with somebody who thinks they got to get all the money out now and me take over the debt and take over their grief. And remember, that's assuming that I'm not buying it at retail price. I'm not going to pay retail price for a property, even if I can take over the debt and have to pay them the difference, even later, I'm not going to pay retail price. Folks, I want to get free equity the day I buy or I don't want to buy. Let me say it again. I want to get free equity the day I buy or I don't want to buy. Now, you make your own decisions, but I'm going to tell you something. If you pay too much for that property going in, you can do everything right going out and lose your tail. If you buy that property correctly going in, you can screw up everything thereafter and still make a bunch of money. That rule does not change from residential to commercial. All right, what to avoid. And this is just as important as what to look for. Pretty properties fully occupied where the seller wants retail price. I think we've hammered that one to death. Any properties where seller is asking price is in la-la land. Any property where the agent is advertising a cap rate below 10% and a seller who wants all cash for more than you can borrow. Now look, it can't get much simpler than that. Now here's the bad news. Isn't that about 85-90% of the properties that are going to come at you?
Yes.
So what did we learn from that exercise? We learned to deal with the minority and eliminate the majority. We learned we can't buy most of the properties people want to sell us. Same thing true with houses, isn't it? Okay, that's why the art of pre-screening is so critical. Don't spend time chasing dead ends. Now, when you learn to not chase dead ends, then you won't send them to us and want us to chase them either, will you? Will you? Okay, good. Pre-screening office buildings. Frankly, there's very little difference. My easy identifiers are large vacancy factors, rundown condition, low asking price per square foot. Now, in the case of apartments, I'm looking at a low asking price per unit. In the place of office buildings, I'm a low asking price per square foot. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is the number one identifier for me. I look at the number of square foot, and I divide that into the asking price, and I ask myself, does that make any sense? In other words, if a nice office building comes at me, and my area, they're anywhere from 100 to 100 and a quarter a foot, and somebody comes at me asking $56 a foot, does it get my attention? Yes. Yeah. But now they're asking $100 a foot. Does that one get my attention? No. Instantly, just like that. Boom. Just like I identified them on LoopNet a while ago. Most of the stuff that comes across my desk on LoopNet, we don't go any further than that. It goes right in the trash. All I do is I get the sheet, I scan the sheet looking for something that appeals to me, and I circle that one, and I tell Tish to pull out the rest of the printout on it. The whole rest of the crap goes right in the trash can. I take the printouts of the ones that come to me, I send somebody out to take a look at them and see if we can make a deal. Sellers offering to finance, that's nice, but don't take that as a distress signal. That may mean they just want to sell at a retail price and are willing to own or finance it. Oh, look at this one. Excess land to cut off to sell or build on. And frankly, that same thing should be over here with apartments. I definitely want to know how big the property is. Because this guy, you got to train yourselves to look for this one, guys and gals. I got an apartment complex, but it's got 10 extra acres. Ooh, that one I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at it. And I hope they're not asking retail price for it, but I'm going to look at it. Because what do I see there? I see 10 more acres that are probably already zoned for apartments, sitting beside apartments. I see land that I might be able to get for free to build apartments on. And anytime you can build apartments on land, it is valuable land. In fact, if it's residential land, the very first thing I want to know is, can I build apartments on here? I want to know that long before I want to know how many lots can I get on here to put houses on. How come? Apartment land is worth many times of land to build a house on. Made that mistake right up the street from my home. And I'm the guru. Listen to this one. 10 acres right up the street from my house. And I live on 10 acres. And we're the only 2 10-acre parcels on the whole area. We live right in the middle of the city on 10 acres. And I got horses in the middle of an exclusive subdivision, for crying out loud. And we're the only ones left. So this guy's got this 10-acre tract up the street. Ugly looking. Piece of crap house on it. He's an attorney. I find out it's for sale. He's asking $1.2 million for this 10 acres. And I say to myself, well, that raw land ain't worth that. Besides, you can only get about, probably 7, 8, 9 houses on that thing. Maybe even as much as 20, but that's a high price for land for just a measly $20,000. Got to go do all that work. Got to put in the roads and do all that kind of crap. That just don't make any sense to me. So I offered him $900,000. He turned me down. He said, I'll take $1 million. I said, no. It's a man thing. Besides, he was an attorney, so he already had 2 strikes on him already. So I didn't buy that deal. It's right up the street from me. So then I find out a few weeks later that somebody bought the property and they were going to rezone it for apartments. It never even occurred to me to rezone it for apartments. I never even thought about it. All I could think was single family because all it was single family around it. Now, is that a totally different value on that property for apartments? You know how many apartments you can build on 10 acres? A lot of them. Now, all of a sudden, that $1.2 million, he's asking for that, and I already had it bought for $1 million. Dirt cheap land now. Once the city says it's zoned for apartments, all of a sudden now we got $2 or $3 million worth of land. But no, I didn't see that. I won't make that mistake again. The very next time, every time I look at land, first question is, can we put apartments on it? I try to go to that seminar only once. And really, the sickening part about this is right down the street from my house.
Say, Ryan, how
got to go by it every day and say, dumb. Yeah.
So you would have called the city and just checked and seen whether they were...
No, I would have done what his buyer. I would put it under contract and make it contingent upon rezoning it for apartments. And then when it gets rezoned, you close on it. Exactly what he did. Which is an only normal thing to do. You know, you're not going to close on the property, pay more than you want to pay, till you know it's going to get rezoned. You're not going to take that chance. Now, don't worry. By the way, I could have bought that property and I could have made money on it. I could have built one luxury home on it and made money on it, even at $1 million purchase price, but not enough to make me want to go do all that crap. And I'm going to tell you right now, the neighbors hate the fact that apartments are coming on there. I mean, I'm one of them. We already can't get out of our driveways. I'm already looking at helicopters. Hey, man, we got to go to the store, get a helicopter. Yeah. Nah, just kidding. I'm not looking at helicopters.
It wasn't the developer that you were riding on the Harleys with, was it?
No, it wasn't a developer I was riding on the Harleys with. No, I don't know who's buying the property. But everywhere around me, every square inch of land is being built on, and they're building condos down there where a church was. This church sitting down the street from me. I had no idea this church was for sale. Nice, beautiful piece of property. Next thing I know, it's condos. So you know what they say about greener pastures, don't you? Huh? Yeah, better look on your own first. Greener pastures on the other side always got manure under them. All right, let's see. Back to office buildings. Rundown condition, certainly that's an easy one. Vacant, that's easy. Low asking price per square foot. Just figure out what officers are worth as a generality in your community, and you'll instantly recognize asking price per square foot. What to avoid? Same thing. Now, here's another tip worth writing down. Make sure you look at how much land the building is on. When you see excess land, you got a bonus value there. And sometimes now, remember, we're looking at commercial properties here, folks. This is not cheap land. When you got land that's already got an office building on it, you know, this ain't $20,000 an acre stuff. It probably starts at $100 an acre and goes way up, depending on where it's located and depending on what city it's in. So excess land is valuable. But sometimes owners don't see that, or they don't see a use for it. In fact, our guy here, Gip Dupree, taught me something talking to Rock, and Rock was telling me about this. You know, Gip builds malls, big buildings, and we were looking at this property with this big lake on it. He points to the lake. He says, "I see a high-rise right there." Rock says, "Where? There's water there." He says, "Yeah, I know, but a high-rise can come out of the water and shoot up into the sky." Who would think building a high-rise on top of a lake? In fact, I got a Walmart right in my city, right around the street from my house, and there's a great big retention pond on it. I can tell you right now, somebody's got some brains that's handling their real estate. They're building a parking lot over the retention pond. They're not going to waste that space. They're literally putting beams across their retention pond, and they're going to park on top of the retention pond. No reason not to. Still got the retention pond. Water still runs off into it. Why waste the space? So these things are they come to people who can see the vision. I was looking at a building in Dixon, Illinois the other day. Who's from Chicago area? And we were up there looking at a closed up nursing home. And 160,000 square foot of nursing home. Closed up. Piece of crap. I mean, as soon as I hit the building, I knew. Now, we could have bought this whole property for $1.5 million, a 160,000 square foot closed up nursing home in this small growing community with a river running through it. I walked in the property and I said, "Ooh, this one is not renovatable." This one needs to be scraped. Scraped, which means bulldozed. Then I asked the broker, and he'd never thought about this. I said, if we were to scrape this building, as bad as this city wants development, I want you to go find out how high we can build a senior citizens home. What they really want there is senior citizens living facilities. He went out and found out that we could go up 8 to 10 stories. 8 to 10 stories. And I believe him because he was on the Planning and Zoning Committee. Okay? That's what I love about these small cities. You know, you don't have to go through this conglomerate of bureaucracy to get crap done. And they need you as worse than you need them. You know, they need people to come in and build create tax money and so forth. So now, am I looking at that property differently now? Yeah, I'm looking at it as a piece of land now. Now I find out there's a vacant nursing home right beside it. It looks like a hospital, closed up because of the state couldn't fund it anymore because they're in a hole. Now I find out the guy bought that whole complex next door for $26,000 at a tax deed sale 3 weeks ago. Yeah, you snooze, you lose. We didn't know. Now he wants $300,000 for that property. Okay, we offered him $100,000. Thought that was fair, don't you think? That's fair. Okay, that's a windfall profit for him. Now, if we happen to get that property tied up, we mix that land with our land, and that's really could be opened up as a hospital right there on site. Now we put a high-rise elderly home right beside it. It's a marriage made in heaven. You know, they get sick, send them next door. In fact, we're thinking about getting us a funeral home in that area too. You knew that was coming, didn't you, Jill? All right. All right, well, let me finish. Well, my point I was trying to make there is, when you're looking at a project, make sure you look at the land value separate from the building value. What is this land worth if it didn't have this building on it? And quite often, the land is worth the asking price for the whole project or more. And people don't see this kind of opportunity. They don't see outside the box. This whole community that I was telling you about. Here's this realtor. Here's this other guy that I don't even know who he was, but he was there. They live in this community. They see this property every single day, and nobody ever thought about just bulldozing this thing. All they could think about was renovating it. There ain't no way I'd want to renovate that. When I renovated it, it was still a piece of crap. The layout on it was atrocious. It needs to be bulldozed. And now when I planted that seed, all of a sudden they got excited about that idea. And it just so happens, they went down and checked it out with a mayor, who was their best buddy. Mayor said, "Oh, God, we love that. Go back and tell that guy we'll do whatever he wants." 8 to 10 stories, just like that. Now, what do you think? You think I could get approval for that project? Yes? Now I find out the mayor's got 4 acres on the river that he wants to develop. Hey, if you're going to joint venture with people, joint venture with the ones who make the rules. 29-acre parcel that I'm coming back to, and Nathan and David have got. First thing I looked at, it's on 29 acres, man. And I sit here and ask myself, geez, if that land is worth $75 to $100 grand an acre, that's $2.1 to $2.9 million worth of value right there, excluding that 160,000 square foot of buildings and 16,000 square foot of office space. Asking price was $4 million, got them down to $3 million. I mean, I almost got the land value. Just the land value is worth, and I'm just guessing it's 75 to 100 an acre. Probably worth more than that. Now I put the buildings in here. I said, man, if the buildings are worth, I don't know, $30 a foot, that ain't too much to ask, especially when, I mean, the warehouse building, that's $4.8 million right there. Okay, so I'm 50% full of crap. It's $2.4 million. Now add that to the land. Now I got a 16,000 square foot office building sitting over here. Got to be worth $50 a foot. That's another $1 million. So I add all that up. I say, man, got $8 million worth of value here. I was wrong. It's $11 million. So a $3 million purchase price don't need too much of a committee meeting, does it? Does it? No. All right. Mobile home parks. And I'm going to give you a down and dirty on mobile home parks. You're looking for a mobile home park full of junky trailers, or wobbly boxes as we call them. How come? Anytime you got a park full of junky trailers, you got a management problem. You got a management nightmare. Because what kind of tenants are going to rent junky trailers? Junky tenants. They're worse than HUD rental apartment people. I have bought mobile homes, and I've had mobile home parks, and I've had mobile homes, and I'm telling you right now, there's only one problem with renting mobile homes, and that's the people who rent them and trying to collect from those people. I have no interest, none whatsoever, in owning mobile homes. I have a lot of interest in owning mobile home parks, but not mobile homes. And I'm telling you right now, you bring me a mobile home park, the first thing we're going to do is scrape it and clean everything off of it and start over. Because that's the only way to turn them around. Oh, I guess you could sit there and spend 3 years, one mobile home at a time, move that one out, move this one in, but not me. I don't have the patience for that. So I want them to do it, and I'm fully aware that it takes more time to clean out a mobile home park than it does an apartment complex, if anybody owns the mobile homes. However, if I'm buying the mobile home park and it comes with mobile homes that I'm going to get, I'm going to have me an auction real soon. Just as soon as I can get all them tenants out of them wobbly boxes, which it don't take too long. All I got to do is bring in a couple of police cars and let them sit there. They're gone, man. So as soon as we clean them out, we have a big giant auction. You guys got 10 days to get your crap off my lot. And frankly, I don't care what they pay for it. Because whatever they pay for is bonus money to me. Just buy this junk and get it out of here. Now I got me a nice mobile home park. I got me a clean slate to work with. And then from there I decide where I want to go with it. And that's when I, landscape it up pretty and make it really nice and start all over. And now bringing in the good quality mobile homes. And then you got to make a decision whether you want to sell the pads. Did you know you could condoize mobile home parks just like you condoize apartments and offices? You can sell the pads if that's what you want to do. Or you can just clean the place up, create your deed restrictions, so to speak. In other words, create the rules by which mobile homes got to come in here. And now owners of mobile homes bring them in there and pay you several $100s a month to park them there. That is a totally different mobile home park than one where you're renting out trailers. I do not want to rent out a trailer. And I do not want to maintain a trailer. And I don't know how to start hurricanes. So I'm not interested in wobbly boxes. You see, that's a business. I'm interested in real estate. And running a mobile home park is more like real estate than a business, but it's a business. But I'm telling you, the grief, there's more grief than any human being needs in running a mobile home park that's got trailers on it. Now, therefore, if I can't buy this mobile home park cheap enough to where I'm looking at a mobile home park only and forget about all the garbage on there. In fact, first thing I'll tell the seller is, I'll tell you what, I'll buy the park, you keep all the trailers. You get them out of here, I'll give you time, you keep them. And so I want to buy just the park. As long as you move them out, that's the first thing. I don't even have to have an auction. And incidentally, if I do have an auction, it's an absolute auction. Come in here and buy this junk, and man, you ain't never seen people congregate around an auction when it's an absolute auction, and the highest bidder is going to take this crap, and they know it coming in. Hey, you got $10? Give it. Because it's better than me paying to get that junk off my property anyway. Or you could just donate all them trailers to a charity. Yeah, donate them all to a charity and get a tax write-off for them. So I'm looking for seller financing. I can't imagine buying a mobile home park and paying cash for it. I just can't. It's very common for them to be sold. Now, I know a lot of them are sold with cash, but guess which ones are sold for cash? Now, the ones that are already in excellent condition where REITs buy them, or investment companies buy them. What to avoid? Pretty parks at retail price. Now, how are you going to determine the ROI of a mobile home park? How are you going to determine what a pad is worth? By the way, you do them just like apartments. What are mobile home pads worth in my area? Call them pads. That would be a concrete square with a couple pipes sticking out of the ground and an electric meter. They call them pads. What is a pad worth? And does anybody know what it costs to build a pad on the average nowadays? Last time I looked, it was about 20 grand a pad. Yeah. Now that's the acquisition of the land, invite them up, putting in utilities and so forth. And, way back, 10, 12 years ago, it was about 10 grand a pad, but that's gone up considerably. Of course, it depends on how much the land costs. That's the key factor. But in an average area, if you think about it, what can you rent a mobile home pad for averagely throughout the country? To a person who owns the trailer. 300 is you start at 300. 300, 400, anybody know? No? I wouldn't want a trailer. I wouldn't want a park that I could only get $250 a pad out of. It depends on the quality of the park and the location and all of that. So if I can get $300 a pad, and I got almost no operating expenses, which is the beautiful part about a mobile home park, what do you got? Taxes, liability insurance, and a lawnmower. And somebody to manage the rents. Low percentage of the gross. That's why people love mobile home parks. They're a cash cow. You don't even have to be on site. You don't even need anybody on site. If you got it rented, they just send you the checks. Somebody goes and checks and mows the yard and so forth. There's nothing to maintain except land and a few utilities. So if I got even if I'm building one and I'm spending $20,000 a pad on it and I'm getting $300 a month, do you need a calculator to know that that's a cash machine with almost no expenses? I tell you, it's a beauty thing. Now you go in there and buy these mobile home parks, and you can get into them for less than whatever the market value is in that area, and you got a cash. And I'll tell you, mobile home parks are a piece of cake to sell. It's like selling money. Everybody's looking the same way you are. Very low management, very low maintenance cash machine. And they're not hard to get financed either, assuming the numbers are there to make them financeable. Manufactured homes are mobile homes.
They're like 50 to 80,000 a piece.
I don't care what the wobbly boxes cost. I'm renting out the pad, remember? Yeah.
Like side by side, double wides.
I don't. God bless them. Bring double wides in. Maybe they knew 2 pads for that. Yeah. In fact, the more double wides, the better. Why?
Less maintenance.
Yeah, it costs us twice as much to move a double wide as it does a single wide. And that's the thing I love about mobile home parks. The tenant ain't skipping out in the middle of the night. It costs several $1,000s to move a mobile home and set it up nowadays. Yeah, so, they ain't going anywhere. They ain't going anywhere. I love these kind of tenants. You don't have to beg them for the rent. Jesus, it's a lot much better than tenants in an apartment where they can move out in the middle of the night. Traverse City has a lot of mobile home parks. Yes, they do. And they might have a couple more.
They got old ones up there, too.
They might have a couple more before it's over. Pre-screening raw land on page 31. Asking price below market. Remember, raw land, you're either looking at it per acre price for residential, per square foot price for commercial. You got to figure out what per acre price is where you live on the average. And then you got to do the same thing for commercial. And how do you do that, guys? You ask the people who know. And who would that be? Commercial brokers and engineers. Correct. And appraisers. We're going to go through the due diligence process before and after we get them under contract, but there's a list right there. That is a great list. Seller financing, I'm telling you, when I'm buying land, I got to have one of 2 things. I'm buying it at dirt cheap prices, and believe me, that's less than 50% LTV if I'm paying cash. And that's not hard to do in land. Or I got to have seller financing short term. Short term means at least 1 year. I'd like to get a couple. If I can't get one of those 2, it's a dead deal. Seller's willing to subordinate or release part of the property for the down payment. We're going to come back to that. Land in the path of progress. You don't want land if it's not in the path of progress, do you? Unless you know who wants it and already have a buyer built in. Zoning already in place. Zoning is a pain in the neck. Unless you live in Houston, where there isn't any. Zoning is a pain in the neck. You can't ever, if you've got to get a property rezoned to make it worth more, you have to look at this thing as if that's not going to happen, don't you? In fact, when you make a hard money loan on a house with your money, what have I told you is the first thing you ought to ask yourself. If they don't pay, do I want this collateral back? And if the answer is no, don't make the hard money loan. If I'm buying a piece of raw land and I got to close on it before I get it rezoned, if I can't get it rezoned, have I boxed myself into a trap, or can I make money with its current zoning? And I'm telling you, I'm not going to buy it if I'm not sure that it's going to get rezoned, or if I'm not sure that I can't make money with it if it doesn't. Another reason why you got to buy it below market, not at market. The more it's in the path of progress, the more it's worth to me. And I think all the land we're buying now is in the path of progress. Certainly true for this Dallas stuff. I mean, you couldn't get further in the path of progress. In fact, if you don't get out of the way, progress is going to run over you if you stand there too long. Frisco, we got property in Frisco, Texas. Population has increased 7-fold in the last 7 years. Is that the path of progress? Do we need some kind of a demographic data research to know that that's the path of progress? Let me tell you how you can find the path of progress. You ready? Here's a simple answer. Look for Walmart. I'm not kidding you. If you got a Walmart going up down the street, research over. Walmart knows how to do their research. If you got a Home Depot going in, if you got any big box going in, I'm telling you, you better get control of all the property around it you can, anywhere near it. Because when you put a Walmart here, guess what happens to the prices of land all the way around it? It goes up. It's the spark plug that drives the economic increase in value. This soccer stadium thing, we got a soccer stadium right beside us in Frisco. That soccer stadium is what drove that economic climate in that area. And you should see the buzz of activity going on around it. Every time I go home, come back to Dallas, there's more crap built. I mean, they're going as fast as they can go. And that soccer stadium is going to open in August. Wait till it gets opened. And it's already got the MLS tournament for October. Wait till the buzz, wait till the activity starts getting going on that thing. We got a brand new mall built in Jacksonville called the St. John's Place. And that thing is huge. And it's the first one like it in our area. And it's where the stores are not in a mall. They're all spread out in this little city environment with streets in the middle where people can walk and go into the sports bars. And the Old Town Community is what it's really called. And you drive through the stores and up in high-end stuff. Many Christmas, you ought to try to get in that place. They got Cheesecake Factory, they got P.F. Chang, and whoever. So you go to this thing, and you park your car, and you walk, and you walk, and you walk, and you walk.
Outside.
So you can go to an outside mall. You should see what's going on around it already. And they build it out in the middle of nowhere. But what do they know? Nowhere is soon going to become somewhere. Now, if you know something like that's coming to your area, does that put you in the path of opportunity? Now, how do you know stuff like that's coming to your area? Get your butt down to the planning and zoning boards and talk to the people who are aware of it before they put it in the newspaper. We have a deal working on 86 acres. We don't have it working. We have it under contract on 86 acres in New York right now. Now think about this. Let's see how much pre-screening I need here. We got 86 acres that's suitable for a subdivision development. Our purchase price is $375,000. Do we need a spreadsheet? Somebody divide 86 into $375,000, see what we come up with. What's that? $5,000 an acre or something like that? $4,300 an acre? Mm-hmm. Okay. If that's not enough, the seller's owner financing it with $100,000 down and financing the balance for 10 years.
How old is he? How old is he?
It's a she. She's old.
Yeah.
She ain't, obviously it ain't going to take 10 years to pay her. It ain't going to take 10 months to pay her. We're going to go in there. And, we're talking about pre-screening. how much do I have to know about this property to know? You know what? All I had to know is it really going to be developed into a residential subdivision? Because at $4,300 an acre for land stuck out in the wilderness somewhere is a bad deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
But $4,300 an acre for land 10 minutes outside of Albany, New York, that's got a great view that we can turn into a subdivision is not a bad deal. I'm waiting for the appraisal right now to determine what the upside is. My guess it's got to be at least $4 million on the upside. Student deal, incidentally.